Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great start to your week. Hope you're having a great Monday. Obviously, this is not my office. I am at the North Carolina Baptist State Convention this week, today and tomorrow, and so I am in my hotel room recording this video for you this week. So they don't give you much lighting in these new rooms. They give you these depressing yellow light lamps. So um, sorry, I would provide more lighting if it was available. But let's dig into the lesson for this week. So we're on Unit 3, Session 4, and we're moving from the story of Abraham into the story of his son Isaac, and particularly into what would be Abraham's grandson, Jacob. And so we're going to cover a lot of scripture in this week's lesson, all the way from Genesis 27 all the way up into I think it's Genesis 32 where we'll stop. And of course, it's not every little chapter, but it's that length or period of narrative that we're discussing. And so, if you know the story of Jacob and Esau, um, then you know that it's a story with a lot of surprising turns, and it's one of the stories that we look at and we question: um, Did God get it right here? And obviously, us as mature believers, we know that God always gets it right, but looks like a man of poor character, looks like a man that doesn't deserve God's blessing, and Jacob has Jacob has an up and down life, and a lot of that comes as a direct result of his disobedience. And so, let's just talk through kind of what this passage means for us, and what we're going to talk about this Sunday. So you've kind of got three narratives that we're going to look at. The first one is when Jacob deceives his father Isaac into giving him his blessing. And so many of us know the story. Isaac's blind, can't really see at the end of his life. I guess he wasn't technically blind, but he couldn't see well. And so instead of allowing Esau, the older brother, to receive the blessing, Jacob puts on this big show, this big lie. Even puts fur on his arms because his brother was very hairy, and tries to deceive his father, and is ultimately successful. And so he basically steals the blessing, which the blessing was everything in that culture. So Jacob stole that from his brother Esau. And so we see that God's plan continues through a deceitful son. So God's plan continues through a deceitful son. That would be the end of the covenant, right? You would see this man's going to go die off, and then Israel's not going to be left with an heir. But God still works, and God still fulfills his promise, even through someone that so much so lied about who he was to gain the advantage of having his father's blessing, which ultimately was passing down the blessing that God gave to Abraham. So very, very strong offense. And Jacob gets what's coming to him. He what goes around comes around, in a sense, I guess. So we see that happens to Jacob. And our second point being that God's plan continues through an unexpected wife. Okay, that's the next part. We know that Jacob goes and he works with his uncle Laban because his brother is furious. Esau is furious at him, so he's like, "I'm going to go to my uncle Laban and just get away." And so he works and he sees a lady named Rachel. He thinks she's really beautiful. He says, "Hey, I'll work for you for 7 years if I can marry Rachel." So Laban says, "All right, 7 years, and you'll have one of my daughters as your wife." Works the 7 years. Laban actually deceives him, so we see the deceiver gets deceived, and he ends up giving him Leah. Now, in that day, there was no Old Testament law yet, so I guess polygamy wasn't a big deal, and so he took Rachel to be his wife as well. But it's actually Leah, the one that Jacob desired least, that would ultimately give him one of his sons named Judah, and that is the line that Jesus came from. So um, it wasn't the woman that Jacob desired, but it was the woman that his sin ultimately got him. It came back to him, and through that wife, we see that Jesus comes um, from Leah, because Leah bore Judah, and Jesus came from the line of Judah. So all that being said, interesting passage there. And then we finally get to the third point, which is God's plan continues through a broken servant. And we see Jacob, he knows he needs to go confront his brother Esau. And so after all these years, he chooses to go back And the night before he confronts Esau, he has this agony. And there's this very interesting passage in Genesis 32 where he wrestles with the Lord, or an angel of the Lord, so to speak. And he would not let go until that angel blessed him. And ultimately, the angel does bless him. He wrestled so hard that he dislocated his hip. And so the rest of his life, he walked around with a limp as a reminder of his struggle with God, of his striving with God through that essentially heavenly wrestling match with an angel, right? And I thought it was good. I was reading the commentary about this, and it says that someone that's had a true encounter with God doesn't walk around with the strut, but they walk around with a limp. Meaning, may not always limp that you walk with, but none of us should have walk around strutting like we're proud of who we are. There's nothing in me that's proud of who I am apart from Jesus Christ within me, right? And so Jacob had this physical reminder for the rest of his life that he had to be broken in order to be a beautiful use of for God. And so I hope that helps you as you're thinking through. It's a lot of content, and I wish I could devote more time to it. However, I think it's important to look at the three narratives and look at what unexpected happens within the three, right? First one, Jacob steals the blessing, right? Second one, Jacob receives a wife that he didn't really want. He receives Leah. And then third, God's plans fulfilled through this broken servant in the form of what happens here at the end, where Jacob strives with God and he struggles, and we see ultimately a blessing come out of that. So anyways, thank you for watching this, and I hope this helps you for Sunday. Thanks, guys.